InspectPoint is a software specifically created for the fire protection industry, optimizing the process and workflow for everything from inspection, testing, and maintenance to follow-up service. Everything from scheduling, NFPA or ULC compliant inspections, deficiency follow-ups, and work orders. Check them out today at inspectpoint.com/FSP for a free 1-month trial. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. On this episode, I have Sean from Lubrizol. Came down to the Walls Kent head office here. It's our only office. Yeah. To do the Freezemaster CPVC training. How's it going today, Sean?
It's awesome. You know what? It's great to finally get out here, see your shop. We've talked on the phone for I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
Worked on side-by-side burners and stuff.
Absolutely.
But it's great to meet everybody. Great to see your shop. Great company.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. It was good. We had about 10, maybe 12 guys here doing the CPVZ training, and it was great to get everybody trained up and educated and ready to go.
Yeah, and I got to have breakfast with you.
It was awesome. Yep.
We
did our
big group
Christmas breakfast here with everybody from the team came here and had food. So it was nice. Yeah, thanks for coming out. Before we get into it, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your history in the industry?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Chris. So my name's Sean Pearce, as Chris said. I am a former chief officer with Toronto Fire Services. Worked on a bunch of different codes in the province of Ontario. Worked on high-rise residential sprinklers, retrofit of care, compulsory certification for the sprinkler trade, and amongst other things. Worked for the Canadian Automatic Sprinkler Association for a number of years, and then started my own consulting business, and now I work full-time for Lubrizol as their fire protection business development manager.
And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today is one of the new products. It's been around for about a year and a half now, but we're going to be talking about one of Lubrizol's new products that you guys have been involved with creating.
Yeah.
And a little more specifically, some of the preventative maintenance that's going to be required with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so listed antifreeze is in the market now, right? LFP's got it. They've been on your podcast with you. We've got it. We're aware there's another company out there that's trying to come to market with a listed antifreeze, and everybody's got different freeze points. But I think, we're there now, right? There's listed products in the market. We're starting to hear back from the field some issues around testing listed products. It's not like testing antifreeze from before. Exactly. Yeah, those days are gone. So you know what? Today we'll go over testing. We'll go over the devices. We'll have a little bit of interaction around it, and hopefully we'll help everybody understand listed antifreeze.
Get a little bit more familiar with the product. So before we kind of get into what your guys' stuff is, why don't we start with the difference between listed and approved? Because there's other products out there that market themselves as an approved antifreeze solution, but to be listed and to be approved are completely different things. Approved is essentially a marketing gimmick.
Yeah, well, so it's not necessarily a marketing gimmick, but NFPA allows for unlisted antifreeze to be used in certain systems. Right? And so those are approved products that can be used in those systems. Yep. Listed antifreeze has gone through UL 2901 and has met not necessarily all of the criteria of 2901, but definitely met the fire performance criteria and has met corrosion performance, conductivity tests, and a number of other things. And then volumes can be different from one listing to the next, depending on how you test it in fire performance. Yep. Materials that you can use your product in can be different depending on the listing. So really what's happened is antifreeze has gone from the Wild West, where you had a freeze point and you did fundamentally anything you wanted with it, to listed product, where now it's very strict guidelines per the listing, and you don't have a freeze point anymore. You have a minimum use temperature, which is has a 2-degree variance, safety variance in it, before you see even one ice crystal in the fluid.
Oh, okay. So there's a safety factor built
into the minimum use temperature,
like everything in fire.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a number of things that make listed products different, and it applies to all of us, right? I mean, we made Freezemaster, but we're all in the same boat. Anybody who's got a listed product is in the same boat on this, and our listings are unique and different for each of us.
So between the Freezemaster and the other products that are out there, as far as compatibility is concerned, other compatibility issues, like anything with a chemical component to it, there's compatibility issues. What type of compatibility issues can you run into between Freezemasters and the other products that are out there?
So they all have to test out on the compatibility list from 2901.
Right.
So non-metallic piping, so like our Blazemaster or any other CPVC product, they have to be compatible with that. And then EPDM gaskets and various gasket materials that are typically used in fire protection, they have to be tested for that. But then you get into some of the metallic piping, and currently Freezemaster is the only product on the market that you can use with galvanized pipe.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a compatibility issue as well, and so it's something to think about. If you're refilling a system that uses galvanized pipe, right now there's only one listed antifreeze that you can use, and that's Freezemaster.
Right.
LFP has a colder freeze point than us right now, so you gotta weigh. Where am I putting this in? What temperature do I need? What material? So it's really become like when you buy a pail of our antifreeze, you get a full technical data sheet,
right?
And in it is all of that information. You want to pick your antifreeze like you pick a sprinkler head.
Sure.
We've moved into that kind of world now.
Absolutely, and that's kind of the way sprinklers getting, like in general, is it's not a one size fits all for fire protection anymore. Back in the days of the pipe scheduled system, there was light hazard and ordinary hazard, but now you get into extra hazard, plastic storage to a certain height.
Right.
Certain sprinklers are listed to certain things. The antifreeze and the components that are associated with the antifreeze are also fall under that same kind of guideline.
Exactly, and that's what's happened by listing these products.
Awesome. So as far as the Freezemaster is concerned with certain types of sprinklers, do you have to be careful with the type of sprinklers you're using with the antifreeze as well?
No, not at all. I mean, ESFR, we're not listed for ESFR, but again, that's in our data sheet.
Yep.
So you have to be aware of that. And you can run it through fundamentally any sprinkler head outside of that, and you'll be fine. We have no issues with brass. In fact, we have our product has a corrosion package in it. We have a metallurgy team at Lubrizol who went through as part of the development of this product, and we've got a corrosion package in our product that actually helps to stop corrosion in metallic systems as well.
Yep.
We really tried to push the envelope. I mean, everybody did.
Sure.
Everybody tried to push the envelope on it.
Yeah.
But you can fundamentally use it with anything, as long as it's in the listing, right?
Yeah, as long as you use it within I won't say limitations, but within the listings.
Exactly. Yeah.
So as far as size of systems, you guys have limitations as far as size of the systems are concerned?
Absolutely. So for Ordinary Hazard Group 1, we have the highest volume right now at 375 gallons.
Wow.
Everybody else is at 40. But again, there's no stopping somebody from going back to UL and testing like we did to improve their volume.
Costs associated would hold it back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and everybody's slightly different, and everybody's trying different things to get a bit of a market edge.
Sure.
So please, when you're using listed antifreeze, please check those data sheets just like you do for everything else in fire protection, and make sure you're choosing the right material.
Yeah, make sure you're using the product properly in the way it's intended to be used. You can't just take any specific antifreeze, Freezemaster or not, and get into a system because it's cold in that room.
Exactly.
That's not the way it works.
Exactly.
So what are the different design things that you have to consider when you're installing antifreeze?
Well, so one of the things, a lot of systems don't have expansion tanks.
Right.
And so you go to refill a system with listed antifreeze, and you're paying so much more per gallon than you were before because of the fact that it's a listed product, right? And if you the window, UL sets the window for refractive index for what's safe for the range,
right? Not
us. So we only have a 5% window. Okay.
Yeah.
So without an expansion tank, what's going to happen is your fluid will expand. If you've got a hole drilled in a check valve or something like that, you will pull water through that backflow device, and you'll continue to dilute that system.
Sure.
Well, with unlisted fluid, you can get away with that. People were topping systems up with raw material or something to bring it back into spec. With listed, you can't do that. It's pre-mixed. It can only be used as pre-mixed.
Right.
So the first thing for everybody to think about is, I'm moving to listed antifreeze. I should quote a system thinking about adding an expansion tank so that I stop dilution, so that excess fluid, when it expands, it goes into the tank and it draws it back out. You're not sucking water through that backflow.
Yeah, when antifreeze systems were kind of first, this was early on in my career.
Yeah.
You were mixing systems yourself. And I'm sure if you look around our shop somewhere, like we just moved, it might have gotten rid of, but we probably still have the pure glycerin antifreeze
So,
here that you would mix
and a lot of
into
people
the
do.
refractometer.
Yeah.
And even today, people still do it, but that's kind of the idea of the podcast, is to get people educated on
Right.
what you should and shouldn't be doing in the industry.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where the listed antifreeze comes into play.
Absolutely. So October 1st of this year is theoretically the deadline for NFPA.
Yeah.
That's the drop dead point where systems are supposed to be transferred over. There is a motion that's gone through second reading at NFPA for the next edition of 25 that actually says you will be able to leave unlisted antifreeze in past that date as long as it tests okay. So when it tests out of spec, then you'll have to change it. Okay, rather than having a drop dead date of October 1st. And there's some other criteria in there as well that will allow you to use listed antifreeze outside of its listing, except for temperature. So you'll still have to fall within the temperature range.
That makes sense.
It'll go to the floor in June at NFPA, and then it'll go to the Standards Council there at NFPA as well. It sounds like it's going to pass, but you never know, right? Any kind of standard change has the potential to fail. Yeah.
And who's on the committee as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And who's voting, right? So we'll see what happens, but there is that will, for everybody in the listed antifreeze market, that will open the market up a little bit for everybody. It'll make it easier to use listed product. Again, listed products, they perform substantially better in a fire than unlisted products. Sure. Right? One of the key parts of that 2901 test is that it won't substantially contribute to a fire.
And that was a big issue.
That's where it all started.
Over a certain percentage, you would get fireballs and stuff like that.
Exactly.
I believe it happened down in the southern states somewhere where there was a.
We had a fatality. Yeah, we had a fatality, a number of injuries around that. So, so any NFPA came out with the TIAs. They did a bunch of research. And they came up with this standard. So, you know what? And it wasn't easy for anybody to get to listed antifreeze. It's been a challenge. I think we'd all like to be down at colder temperatures. JCI got their LFP Plus down to some colder temperatures.
Yeah,
but
theirs is the first antifreeze. I mean, we'll get into the specifics of yours, but theirs was the first one that actually became potentially able to be used in Canada.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, with it, though, in order to get down to those colder temperatures, viscosity goes up. And so they have a minimum 20 psi and head pressure.
That's right. They have specific hydraulic calculations that you have to follow depending on the temperature that you use. And it does vary. It's not a specific 20 psi for 20. It varies as you go up in temperature.
But I mean, at its minimum use temperature, you've got that 20 psi. And so you know what? It's a challenge. It's not easy, and it's not the big. I think the biggest problem is this industry's been using antifreeze for so long and done it one way, and now we're saying, you're still going to use antifreeze. So it is listed, which a lot of people don't make the connection. Oh, and by the way, now you have to follow all these rules.
That's right. Yeah. Make sure you're installing it properly. Make sure you're not exceeding the volume limitations. Compatibility issues. You're looking at the gaskets that are in the grooved couplings. Now, if you're using it in a Blazemaster system, compatibility issues, which you're not going to have, but compatibility issues with the gaskets in the
absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, today one of the things we've heard back is about testing it. Now people have bought it; it's in the systems, whether it be ours or LFP or anybody else. How do you test this stuff? Because your typical refractometer that was set to a glycerin scale or a glycol scale or a brick scale, they don't work anymore. Right. People are struggling to keep using those devices and finding they're not getting good readings. So I appreciate doing this with you because I think if we can help people understand what device to buy, which is the one that's going to work best, and what to do, how to use it, what to do, what are the steps involved, I think we're going to help everybody with their listed antifreeze. Awesome.
So what we have here is we have a digital refractometer right here.
Yeah.
Where did you get this one from?
So that's a MISCO device.
Okay.
Available throughout North America. The other device that I have in my hand here is a Reichert device.
Okay.
Both of these model numbers of these devices have RI check. So they both, it's funny, they both check for bricks, which is typically used for beer. It's like a sugar-based check.
More than one use?
Exactly, yeah. Wine, whatever it is you're making. And RI. So if you have one that's a glycerin scale or a glycol scale, because that's what you were using before, this fluid won't test out properly.
Right.
Right. You only want to test RI. So in our install guide, there's it's a very it's a very simple little chart. It's a single bar chart, and it says concentration of Freezemaster refractive index at 77 degrees Fahrenheit or 25 degrees C should be anywhere between 1.388 and 1.392. Okay.
Yeah.
So on these devices, so if you want to fire that one up,
sure.
Just press the go button on that one.
No sample detected.
No sample detected. Yeah. So here's one of the first things to think about is I brought this as an example. When you test, and it's a little different for again than maybe what we've seen in the past. What you're being asked to do is draw out a half gallon of material.
What's the reason for
so that you
drawing a half gallon?
You get material from a bigger portion of the system.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead of just getting a few mil in a dropper, you're getting a good substantial amount of fluid. Before you draw this out, you want to make sure you shut the valves on your backflow device. You don't want to pull water into your system.
Right.
So close down your backflow valves. Open up your test and fill cup valve so that you can actually draw the fluid out. You don't have vacuum in there. Okay. Draw out your half gallon. If you're doing it in the field, one of the problems that we've seen people run into is that the fluid might be, especially if you're doing it in the winter, the fluid might be minus 10 degrees Celsius. And your device is 10 or 15 degrees Celsius.
Right.
People aren't getting good readings. A couple of contractors, what I found that they're doing now is they're taking this half gallon and they're bench testing all their fluid back at their shop.
Getting it back to the shop, warming it up.
Warming everything up, and they have a good clinical setting, really, to test their antifreeze. And that seems to be the easiest way to do it.
Okay.
So rather than everybody having a refractometer in their truck, you've got one back at the shop. You've got somebody who's got used to doing it, used to looking after the device, because we're gonna talk about that. One of the things about these devices that we've run into is after you use them, you need an alcohol wipe to clean the lens off. Because these fluids do leave a little trace material.
Sure.
And if you don't clean the lens, you won't get a good reading.
You're putting a small amount on there. Any little extra material that's not exactly the same is going to affect the reading.
Absolutely. Yeah. So clean before you use a little alcohol wipe. And then, get yourself a dropper like this. You need 6 to 8 drops to get a good reading as well.
Okay.
I bought a case of these at Uline for $19, and I should have checked. I got 500 of them. I got more of these than any contractor will ever need. Yeah. Send me a note. I'll get you some droppers. So once you've got drawn out, when you go to test, budget and think about pricing for at least a half a gallon going back in the system. Right. So think about how you're pricing to do an inspection on antifreeze. It's going to be different than before.
The other thing to consider when you're taking the product out to do the testing is you have to replace that antifreeze that you've done. So is there an issue with replacing Freezemaster with the LFP product?
So you cannot mix listed antifreeze.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to do a site check before. Part of the new installation standard is to actually leave a placard.
You have to put. So on every pail of Freezemaster, we attach a tag that meets the requirements of NFPA.
Okay.
So it's got location, date of install. It has the freeze point. It has the product name on it. There's a barcode on it for you to get information in the install guide off our website. The checklist and the inspection log is on the back, so it's good for I think 3 or 4 years worth of inspections.
Okay.
On the tag itself, if you need more of these tags, we can get them for you. You can get them through Viking Supply Net, or they can get them. Anybody in Canada can reach out to me. I'm happy to get them.
Where is this available in the States?
Through Supply Net as well.
Supply Net. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So the tags are there, so that should make life a little bit easier. When you draw this out, if you're going to bench test it back at your shop, make sure you have at least a half a gallon in your truck to put back in the system before you open up those backflow valves again.
Right.
So you don't bring water into your system. And then once you get it back to your shop, now you got to test it, right? It's been sitting for a few hours. Everything's the same temperature. Now you got to test it. So I've got, there's a dropper for you, and I've got one. One of the things that's unique about our product, of course, is the color. The pail's purple and the fluid's blue.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. and so the blue color is simply to help you when you fill a system.
Okay.
As soon as you start seeing color, you know you've got antifreeze flowing. Right?
Oh, okay.
So it's just a simple indicator.
It's a visual.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the other stuff is a clear.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Which, you know what else is clear? Water.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little hard to understand. You're not sticking your fingers in there.
You're trying to feel for, okay. Exactly. So what we're going to do, we're both going to just draw out one dropper. We're going to...
You said 6 drops?
Yeah. So we're going to drop 6 drops in the well. The well on yours is a little bit bigger than mine.
Yep.
I'm going to press, I've got mine set to RITC. Yours should be set to
No sample detected. Oh, no.
ND20 is the setting on the MISCO. Okay. So you've got a reading of
1.3921.
1.3921. So refractive index at 25 degrees C is 1.392. So we go to 3 decimal points.
Yep.
These devices go to 4 decimal points, but
yep.
you've got good fluid. Right?
Makes sense.
Well, it came out of the pail, right? So and I've got the same reading on my right dart one here, 1.392.
Yep.
Right? So both of these devices work well. I'm using on the right dart, I'm using the RITC scale, which is refractive index. Using their ND20, I believe.
Yep.
ND20 is their refractive index scale for the MISCO. Both devices have read properly, and you got good fluid. In theory, now this fluid is good. So if you on your next system, you can try and reuse this. If you need to dispose of listed antifreeze, the easiest way we found to dispose of it is, or any antifreeze product you've got for that matter, take it to Jiffy Lube. They get rid of automotive antifreeze all the time.
Oh, okay.
They charge you like $10 or $15 a gallon, and it's gone. So build that into your price. Like make sure, don't get caught off guard. We don't want anybody to be, out of pocket on these. We got to educate, property owners that listed antifreeze is going to cost more to maintain than unlisted. But things to think about. Shut those backflow valves before you drain out a half gallon of material. Open up your fill cup so that you don't have a vacuum in the system. Get your half gallon, put a half gallon back in, put the system back in service. Yep. Bring it back for bench testing, I think is the easiest way. And you're not buying multiple of these devices. Right?
One for every truck.
Exactly. Yep. And away you go and you're good to go. Now, get rid of that little bit of antifreeze, and before you put your device away, you want to wipe that sensing glass off I use an alcohol white, and it just dissolves all of anything that can go hard or create a sticky residue on the sensing glass. You put it away, and you're good to go for the next one. And it's that simple and straightforward.
Awesome. One question I had while we're sitting here and we were thinking about it is, what's the lifespan of this antifreeze? Is there an automatic every 5 years, 10 years, 15 years you have to replace it?
Yeah.
What's the degradation of it?
So it shouldn't degrade at all in a perfectly sealed system.
Okay.
Right. Unfortunately, sprinkler systems aren't perfectly sealed. So, and you have expansion and contraction, and all these things happening inside a sprinkler system. You have, existing corrosion on an existing system. And the right guard one's here too. You've got things that can affect and change the composition of the fluid.
Right.
The first time you fill from unlisted to listed, my sense is that the lifespan of the fluid may be a little shorter than we'd like.
Right.
Because of any other contaminants that are in the system. But once you flush that out a couple times, it'll get longer and longer.
So what do you recommend doing if you have somebody that has an unlisted antifreeze system and they're putting a listed antifreeze in there? Is it simply a drain and refill, or are there other additional steps that you should be taking? Obviously, if there's drops, pull the drops, things like that.
Yeah.
But should you be flushing it? Should you take into consideration if it takes 5 gallons to fill a system, you should buy 10 and flush 5 gallons through the system and kind of pull any of it out?
Yeah, well, I would absolutely flush the system with water.
Before
you pull the drops. If you're pulling drops, I would flush that whole system with water, then pull the drops and drain everything out. Make sure you've got as much contaminant out of that system as you can before you start putting Freezemaster in. And then put your drops back in. I know it sounds ridiculous because now we're talking about adding an expansion tank, which is expensive, potentially replacing all the heads if you're pulling heads.
Right.
The first time you refill, and I know that sounds crazy, but we just got to get people to understand this isn't the antifreeze of yesterday. It's now listed.
Yeah.
It's a different type of material. So you want to make sure you get any residual material out of the system as best you can to extend the life of it for your customer.
And this is everything that has to come into play according to NFPA October 2022.
Yeah, October 1, 2022.
October 1, 2022.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on and talking about this stuff. That was an information overload as far as the antifreeze is concerned, which is awesome. We're going to play with this a little bit more after. We're going to get some different shots and stuff like that. Sean, thanks for coming.
My pleasure, Dan. Good to see you again. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, thanks so much.
Hey everybody, this episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast is brought to you by the Laying It Down for Camp Bucko fundraiser that we're working on. We're looking to break the world record for the longest stretch of 1.5-inch fire hose. We're going to be doing it sometime in the end of the summer, early fall. As of right now, I have about 10 kilometers of donated hose. Thank you for everybody who has supported and donated. If you're interested, if you want to learn more about Camp Bucko, go to www.campbucko.ca. If you want to learn more or how you can help out with the event or to sponsor a fire hose, go to www.firesprinklerpodcast.com. Enjoy this episode. Thanks for listening.